Hi, hello. Welcome to Between the Lines. That is the name of our channel, isn't it? Between the Lines. I had a sudden moment of thinking it was some other thing. Between the Lines, where we give you a behind the curtains peek at the lives of two best-selling authors and pass along any hints and tips and tricks that we have of being a writer in the writing world. And today we're going to do a little bit of a different shift. I probably should have introduced us, but I'm going to do this first. We're going to talk about readers, how readers can find books, and then we're going to talk about how writers can make their books findable. So let's kick this off. I'm Devon Monk.
I'm Diana Farrow Francis.
Let's get going on this. Diana, how do readers find books? Where can readers find books?
I wish we had readers here to tell us. I'm going to talk about how I find books first, I guess. I often these days, it's often when I'm reading in a Instagram group, or I'm looking at Blue Sky, or I'm looking on Facebook and somebody says, hey, great book, right? Or the ads pop up. And yeah, I get taken in by some of those ads. Like I will click through and see if that book looks like something I want to read. So that happens to me. I mean, I don't want to say I fall for ads, but ads do affect me. But I don't advertise that way. And because I don't, maybe I should, but we'll get to that later. And when people in groups that I belong to are talking about a good book that they've read or something like that, but oddly, when I hear about the big popular books, I don't necessarily want to go read those. And I don't know why. It's like I haven't read, is it Rebecca Yarros, her books? I haven't read those. I bought them for my daughter and she likes them, but I haven't read those, and I haven't read some of the others that are really popular. And I'm not even sure why. I'm not sure why those didn't strike me as compelling to read. Maybe they aren't fitting my mood right now. But when I go into bookstores, I walk down the aisles, and if something grabs me, a title, a cover, and then I read the back book blurb. What I don't often do is go onto a platform like Amazon or Kobo or Barnes and Noble and just sort of search for general stuff I like. I might search for authors I like to see if they have new books, but often, like, one of my favorite writers is not a fantasy writer or a science fiction author. She's a mystery writer. And I often have notifications set up for when her new books come out and things like that. Or you can go on BookBub and follow writers and get notifications of new books, which is great. And I do that with a few authors. But it's interesting because I know that I don't necessarily find books the way general readers find books. And so that is one of the difficult things about making our books findable, which we're going to talk a little bit about later. How do you find books?
Well, here's one way that I should and I don't. And I want to I was just thinking, I wasn't thinking about it before we decided to do this podcast, but it hit me. I want to talk about something that your local library does. And I didn't know about this until last year. And the local library has this basically recommend to me a book thing that you can fill out online. It's a form. And they ask you what you like, what you're interested in, maybe other books you've liked or movies that you've liked and stuff like that. It's this whole form that you fill out, and it's not difficult. And then once you get it filled out, your library will generate a list of books that they think might be the kind of book that you like, even if it's not exactly in the genre that you expect. But they're like, yeah, this is that same kind of book, just in a slightly different genre. You're going to get that same kind of fun read out of it or whatever you're looking for. And I know that I've had family members fill out those forms, and then they've brought me the forms and they said, okay, like I was looking for good sci-fi, that's good action adventure and stuff. And these are the titles that I recommended. And I looked down that list and I'm like, hot dang, that is a fantastic curated list. I was like, yes, you should read that one. Yes, you should read that one. Yes, you should read that one. That one's fantastic. That one I didn't like as much, but yes, you should read that one. Like it was a great list. And I thought, Devon, you should do that. I haven't done it. But I think most local libraries have this option, and it's free with your library card. Support your libraries. Let's not let our libraries disappear.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's absolutely a free resource that you can do. Takes no time. You get this really cool list. And also, if your librarians are plugged in at your libraries, your reference librarians will tell you what books are like other books that you can read. Now, okay, so I'm going to just set libraries to the side, but free, people, libraries. So for me,
which I'm going to poke in there and say, when you go into bookstores, talking to the booksellers, good booksellers have read a lot of books, know their sections, and can say, yeah, if you like that, you're going to like this. So
right.
there's that element also.
I think so. And also that's, even if you don't have any of the big name bookstores in your town, if you just have a used bookstore, you're going to get that same kind of, not just, but you're going to get that same kind of attention. A used bookstore seller is going to know the books and know what's popular and what people are asking for. So, or even old titles and stuff. So yeah, definitely bookstores are a good spot too. So for me, for a while, I was using Goodreads, and this is a weird thing, but I was looking for very specific kind of tropes in books. And so I would go to Goodreads, and they make lists there where readers will make lists of, these are books with these tropes that are coming out in June. These are books with these tropes. And by tropes, I mean, like, if it's like, it's let's say epic fantasy with like political epic fantasy, like you could find a list of upcoming political epic fantasy, on Goodreads. It's on their Listopia page. Goodreads is owned by Amazon's, just to let you know, but it's online and it's free to join, and you can look there.
And that's by readers creating the list.
That's readers creating lists. So I would go there, and I could look at like what's more recent or what get upvoted more. Some of them are like, oh, this has, 7,000 reviews and everybody upvoted it. And this one has 3 reviews and everybody upvoted it. And I'd be like, well, is everybody the author upvoted it 3 times? So like you can kind of tell, where things get voted, but very useful, free. And after that, I'm like you, I'm online a lot when I'm writing. And so I was looking at my social media. So for me, it's Blue Sky, and it's usually authors reposting their books, and authors, you need to post your books more often. That's a side subject, but you need to post on social media more. I need to post on social media more, but it takes me a few times to see a book go by before I actually think, oh, that looks interesting. I have ad blockers on all of my platforms, so I don't see any of the ads that go by. I see no book ads go by.
It's weird. I have ad blockers on Facebook, but they pop up in sponsored things. Like if you're watching a video, it'll pop up or something like that. I must get your ad blocker information. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, right. But in a bad way, I don't see the ads that I might want, the books that I might want to see. But and then I don't really use Amazon as a search for books. Like you, when I hear about a popular book, I'll think, well, does that sound interesting to me? And sometimes I will read a book, even if it isn't interesting to me, just to see what all the hubbub's about. And it's just kind of, I feel like I'm a little bit of an industry spy. I'm like, all right, why is everybody loving this book? I'm going to go read it, even though it's not my kind of book. And then I'm like, I disagree, or I agree, or whatever, So I have read Yarrow's Fourth Ring. I read the first one to see what it was all about. I want to see what the hubbub was all about. So
did you like it?
Oh, here's what I'm going to...
Just in general.
Okay,
you don't
so
have to
as an
review
author,
it,
I'm going to have to say, I think she delivered a complete story. I liked the twist at the end very much. I really wanted to see more of the side characters and have them be fleshed out more. I felt like they got underserved a little bit. It feels like a YA or a new adult academy fantasy, which is not my preferred genre.
I think that's what's turned me a little off too, because for me, I don't, if it says YA, if it says new adult, young adult, often it kind of, I don't go there. And it's not because it's going to be a bad book. It's just because it's dealing with a level of life that I'm not interested in right now, for me, in terms of my reading. I want to deal with a different level of life, which does not make that stuff bad or less important or anything,
Right.
but it
Just
has
help.
its readership, and I'm not currently its readership. Even though I know tons of people my age will read YA and get a lot out of it and be happy, and I could do that too, except for right now. And the academy stuff especially kind of tends to turn me off, but I think that's because I'm a recovering academic, and so all the teaching stuff just makes me go, oh God, I was so tired of that, and I was in such a toxic place that I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that but the point is, it's very personal when people choose their reading, right? It's very
Absolutely.
personal.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, from a writing perspective, there's some world building that doesn't ring that I didn't get enough explanation for. So I would say that it was a hole in the world building, that I could not suspend my disbelief. That's a thing that you'll hear editors or writers say, which is like, you can tell me that you're a robot who has hacked their governor's module, and therefore they're a rogue, and they're going to meet up with some people who they might actually protect, and that their life might change. You can tell me that that's all happening, and that there's going to be a monster that they dive down the throat of and shoot with their arm guns. Okay, you can tell me that, but you have to make me believe that that's going to happen. You have to suspend my disbelief that, like, robots aren't going to do that. No robot's going to jump down a monster's throat. That's silly. That doesn't happen. But a writer, I'm not going to say good or bad, but a writer who is really following the world building will make me believe that. And so, like, I'm all in for the Murderbot books because I believe them. I'm on for the Murderbot.
Yeah.
There were pieces of, I've gone too long on this, but there were pieces of Fourth Wing that I couldn't suspend my disbelief. I couldn't believe that that was true. So that kind of got in the way of some of my enjoyment. But I know that a lot of people have gotten into that book, and it has been the first fantasy that they've ever read, and they liked it, and they want to pick up more fantasy. And so for that, huzzah, and thank you, Rebecca Yarros, because it is
Yes,
bringing
definitely.
people in to read, and I love that. So now you have my very long explanation of did I like it. It's like, I think it's really good for what it is. It isn't probably my read, and I'm not going to read more, but I'm glad that I saw what it is and that other people are enjoying it.
And I think that raises a point, though, for us, and this is why it's hard for us to sometimes pinpoint how readers actually do things versus us, because we are both readers and authors. So when we read it, it's hard to separate um, sort of that authorly voice in our head. So as we're reading, we're also noticing, oh, look, they did this here, or they did this here, or they did this here. And so it's really hard sometimes to just enjoy for enjoyment and not sort of do some dissecting, because we're always going, oh, that's cool. I want to be able to do something like that, or, ooh, that's something I should avoid, or what have you. And so even though as I approach, putting my books out there, I try to think as a reader. I don't think I always approach it as a general reader so much as an author reader, which is not, I don't think, the same
Right.
thing.
Which is a whole nother subject. But yeah, authors, and there's that thought of what is the focus of an author when the author is writing a book to try to create a good read, and are you focusing on the things that a reader wants for a great read, for
Right.
whatever, for that particular book, right? Off subject, we're trying to say how readers find books. And so how readers also find books, besides, we just talked library and online, and Goodreads has good lists. There's
And word of mouth, because that's how Rebecca Yarros really went,
yeah,
right?
word of mouth is fabulous. And then there's Storygraph, which is like Goodreads, but it's not owned by Amazon, and it's a place where readers can keep their lists of book, and you can look at other readers' lists of books. So if you find somebody who's reading a couple of things you like, you can see what else they've read if they've liked it. Then I'm going to say kind of a funny one, Reddit. I know we were talking about, like, I generally am on Blue Sky, so I see recommendations go by on Blue Sky. We talked about Facebook. I do not like Twitter or X or whatever it is, so I just ignore that completely. You're on Instagram. I'm not really on Instagram. I do have an account there, but I don't go visit Instagram. Reddit is another place where people will post, hey, what's your favorite fantasy book or whatever? And
Yeah, I've seen that
yeah,
actually.
so it's a good place to go look, and that's people telling people, and so that's recommendations that way. Okay, now here's a couple that you and I'm not sure if either of us have really invested much into this. Have you ever watched Book Talk or TikTok, where the book talkers show off the cool books and talk about the cool books, which is another reason why Rebecca Yarros's books were so popular, is she really trended on TikTok for a while.
Okay, so here's the deal. Some people from Book Talk will post over to Instagram, and so I can watch some of those videos. But here's the real problem for me with Book Talk. I just, it's so big. I don't navigate well. I don't find the book talks that talk to my interests, and it gets to be a time suck. And we know how much time we have is limited, especially when it comes to writing. So for me, it's there's a level of work that I don't want to spend to learn that in order to get those recommendations, when I can look elsewhere, or I can ask friends, or there's authors out there that I know of that are producing books that I like. It's finding new authors that would be so useful for me, new to me authors,
Right.
that would be really useful for. But in some ways, I, as a reader, need those curated a little bit more for me to be able to find. And I have not done a good job of figuring out how to navigate TikTok in order to find those things.
Right.
So that, I'm not saying TikTok's bad.
No,
I'm saying it works really well for people who know how to navigate
yes.
it. It's just, as a reader, that's not me.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, and I'm going to say I don't use TikTok. I've never signed up for it, and I'll tell you why. Because I knew how much of a time sink it would be, and I am on such limited time right now. I'm like, if I turn that button on, I'm never going to get anything else done, and there are just things that have to happen. And so for good or for bad, I can't plug into it at this point in my life. Maybe in the future, but I just can't right now. So I know I'm missing out on tons of stuff over there. But it's okay. It'll be there. I can go find it, I'm sure, in the
Maybe
future.
not. Now, see, that's the other part that's slowed me down, is ever since a year or two ago there was a threat to shut down TikTok.
Yeah.
It's still it was postponed, but apparently I read recently, with this administration's fight with China ratcheting up, it doesn't look right now good for a deal on TikTok. So it may still crash and burn because of that. And so for me, it's, what if I go and invest this time to learn and figure it out, and then it vanishes in a puff of smoke? I'm not willing to do that right now.
Right. Now,
And that's just a personal thing, but
I will say there's another one that I'm going to join. Here I am being like, I'll never do that. Now I'm like, no, I'm going to do that. So there's another TikTok that my brother was talking to me about, and it's called Skylight. And it is,
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's really new. It's built on Blue Sky's infrastructure. I think Mark Cuban's involved in it. I don't care about that, but like, it's called
Skylight.
Yeah, it's called Skylight, and I'm going to go join it. And if it's TikTok light, like if it's TikTok that you can actually find what you're kind of looking for in there, then I might try it and try not to lose time to it. Now, the next one that I'm going to say is YouTube booktubers. Now, this was a thing way back. Oh, I got to say one other thing. Way back when you and I first started in the industry, booktubers were kind of the new fresh thing. First were bloggers, which is what I should mention before this, but we'll just go to YouTubers. But YouTubers doing what back then was a new thing called vlogs. This is before even influencers was a name, right? YouTubers talking about books was a way that a lot of people found books. They used to do book hauls and that whole thing. Do you watch any YouTubers who do book reviews or book hauls?
I don't. And here's why. For me, it's a distraction. It takes too long. If I can read it, I can read it fast. If I watch a booktuber or something like that, they take their time. They talk about it. Great. Where they do what we're doing now.
Right.
It's great. But the problem is again, time limitations. And I personally can find books faster and more on point to what I like, um, in other ways that are reading based. And I think that may be a little bit of a problematical gap in my approach maybe to marketing, because or getting my book out there, because I don't think along those terms, because a lot of people will listen to booktubers or what have you as they're walking or doing stuff like that, and I don't tend to do that, because things like walking time and stuff like that is sort of a think about story time, or think about other things, and or ground myself, and sort of let all the brain weasels go to sleep, try to let the brain weasels go to sleep. So it's difficult for me to want to take the time.
Understandable. So let's go back to some written media. Now, there's a couple of other spots that I can think of. I'm trying to put all my ideas in, and these are the other places. Publishers have book pages. Like if you
Yeah,
go to Penguin Random House, or if you go to Fairwood Press, which is a fantastic small publisher
absolutely.
out of Seattle or in the Seattle area, all of the books are listed there. There's links to buy from the publisher if you want to, if you don't want to buy through Amazon and other places. There's also, I think, links to buy on Amazon. I'm assuming, I haven't been over there recently, but it might be just you buy straight from the publisher. But you can get books and book recommendations. Sometimes there's they'll list like their top ones, or here's your cozy beach reads, or here's your hot fantasy or cozy mysteries for this season, and here's your horror for this season. Like they'll do lists and stuff on the publisher pages. So I guess if you find a publisher that you really like let's say you love Tor or one of those, you could
Hmm.
go to Tor's page and just see the books that they have coming up or have recently come up. And I've gone through there just to look at all the pretty covers. And so, you can go find books at publisher pages. The other place that I can think of is bloggers, and there are fewer book review bloggers out there than there used to be, but they are still out there.
And there are book review newsletters.
Okay,
um,
and that's another one, right?
right, that usually they focus on a particular genre, romance or science fiction or mystery, or fantasy, and they look at new books coming up. The problem is there's so many new books coming up, or there's so many books that have come out, that nobody can actually review everything. And there's always the question, if you're an independent writer, independent published writer, then are your books making it into their
Ecosystem.
slots? Are they noticing it at all?
Right. And then I'm just going to list off a couple quick. There's grocery stores have books, and those are usually the
Yep.
most popular titles. There are, if you go into a specialty shop, you'll see books there. So, like you go into a knitting store, you'll see possibly knitting books. And then you were talking about new review newsletters. Then there's also discounted books newsletters. So that's things
Yeah.
like Free Booksies, Book
Fussy
Gorilla,
Librarian.
Fussy Librarian, BookBub. Those are all online book,
Free to subscribe to.
and you will get an email daily or weekly or whatever you decide monthly, where they will show you books that are free or discounted to 99 cents or $1.99. And they are books that are independently published and traditionally published. So it's the new stuff that's coming out from, the biggies and the littlies. And you can click through and either purchase or download for free those books. So that's another place I think where you can discover books if you sign up to those kinds of newsletters.
Yeah, and the thing to note about some of that stuff is, um, they're interesting, because authors or publishers will um, buy ads in there, or buy recommend space in there, but some of those are semi curated. Like we don't, especially BookBub, they get enough people wanting to do that, then they're like, okay, these are what fit here, we don't want too many of this. I don't know what their algorithm is like, but I do subscribe to the BookBub newsletters, and they also send new release newsletters and of upcoming books and stuff. So yeah, I'll read through. I do make a habit of reading through what's available, and I have found authors I like on there. Not necessarily the books that are there, but if I like what I see, I'll click through and see more of them. or of what that author's published. So that can definitely work for me.
Now, I'm going to say one other newsletter that we've ignored, which is silly, is writers' newsletters. So in my
Yeah.
newsletter, which goes out once a month, and your newsletter, which goes out about as often, moving to once a month schedule maybe, I always put friends' books at the bottom of my newsletter. So whenever my newsletter goes out, at the bottom of my newsletter, if you scroll all the way down, I put out either new releases from my friends, or if they've got a discount on their book, it's in my newsletter. And also sometimes if a friend has a deal going, I'll just make sure that I have that in my newsletter. So my readers can find other writers, because I figure that's part of the fun of a writer, is helping readers find other writers, and maybe those other writers might find me eventually someday, or other readers of writers. It's just like, it's a good way to just share the joy. So writers newsletters will often have their own books, new releases come out, so they're good to subscribe to for that, and friends books. And I know some authors put out newsletters very frequently, like a couple times a week, or
Right. Yeah.
just every day or something. That's too much for me as a reader, but you will find writers who really only do like once a month, just to catch up on the news, and here's some books at good prices. So I think author newsletters are good to subscribe to if you like an author. Try it out. You can always unsubscribe.
And another one I forgot about is Discord has all kinds of different groups you can join, and many of them are devoted to reading certain kinds of books, or might be devoted to an author, or to a sort of a niche group of people who like certain kinds of things. So definitely, kind of perusing Discord and finding a group that will give you recommendations and talk to. And then there's just simply going out onto your own social media and saying, I'm looking for some books to read. This is what I like, or this is what I'm in the mood for. Can you give me recommendations?
Right. And I'm going to say one thing, because I was talking to my kid about this, I don't know, a couple months ago. They were looking for some new books, and they're like, I'm looking for some recommendations. So, they over here on this group, people are loving this book. So it sounds right up my alley. I'm going to download it. And they come back to me and they're like, that was not at all good. I didn't enjoy that book at all, and it didn't live up at all to the hype. And what the heck? And then this happened several times until they're like, oh, book recommendations are just like movie recommendations or restaurant recommendations or whatever. Everybody has different tastes. So somebody who may absolutely love something, you think it sounds like it's up your alley, it might not be up your alley. So it can take a while to find somebody who either has your exact same taste in books, where like, oh yeah, if they like it, I'll probably like it too.
Right. Yeah.
Or you can do that opposite thing, which I've done before. If they hate it, I know I'm going to love it. Right. I do that with movies. I have some friends who will recommend movies to me, and I will know that if they love it, I won't. And if they don't, I will. Like, we have opposite tastes in movies. And so whenever they're like, oh, I hated this, I'm like, good to know. And then I go watch it. It's great. So, you can also find the opposite taste too. And yeah.
But that brings me to another question. So suppose you hear about a book and you go online to Barnes & Noble or Amazon or whatever, and you look at that book and you read its description. Do you look at the reviews at all to see? I do too. 100%. I read through some of the reviews because, and it's interesting, I'm never sure quite what I'm looking for, but there are certain things that I've noticed instantly turn me off. And if I read through reviews and I'm seeing some of that, I'm just like, it usually is on the fence, where I pay attention to those. Is this going to work for me? And it's on the fence. And when it comes to reading romance, I'm discovering that if it says sweet or heartwarming, it turns me off. And it's not the level of sex that does it. It's just those two words often, not to other people, but often to me, come with a certain amount of preachiness in the book that I don't like. Because sweet and wholesome can also be words that say, and no offense, but can say, no gays here, no trans people here, no, none of that sex before marriage stuff, and kind of pushes certain values. And that just,
Yep.
especially now, just makes me go, no, I'm not going to go there. I can
Yeah.
read other
Not where I
things
want to put
that
my
are
time
going
or
to
my
be,
money. Yep.
yeah. And I know that that's not necessarily what those words mean, but often to me, that's what they mean. So yeah, that sets me, if I start seeing too much of that, or even in the description, I'm just like,
So it's not. I will read the description, but I'm going to tell you how I do reviews. You want? Here's Devon's
yeah, yeah.
secret how she judges a
Secret
book.
recipe.
Secret recipe. So I go in and the first thing I do is I sort the reviews to the most recent. And Amazon has changed where they have that now. And I
I
think
know. I noticed that the other day. It was awful.
it's awful, but I think you have to click on the stars, and then below that you can click on sort it by the most recent with all stars.
Yeah,
So I do
yeah.
that to see because I want to know what the most recent people have said. I don't know why, but for me it helps. Okay.
Right.
So because here's why. I'll tell you actually why. Because if it's an author that has a big fandom, when the book first comes out, all of their fans are going to attack it and eat it up, and they're going to be like, "This is the best thing ever in the world of anything. This is is the best book ever, 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 ever." Because they are super fans and they are quick to read it and they're quick to review it, and they will always have the most enthusiastic, gushing reviews. I get that. I'm happy for that. I'm like, okay, good. They've got fans who are on their side. I love that. I love that for my books. Like I love it.
Yeah,
But if I
right.
go to the more recent reads, those are people who took a while to get to the book, who maybe come to it because they aren't big fans and they're just kind of trying out the book and stuff. And so I get I get like a me read because I haven't read this author before. Maybe I'm coming to it at this time too. And it's maybe going to be more of my kind of a read because I'm not a super fan, right?
Sure.
That's the
Yeah.
first thing I do. That's why I sort it by date. Then I look at if it's a 5 star, I'm like, okay, that's a good review, or a 4 star. Okay, that's a good review. And then I click to 1 star only. And I want to see what the complaints are. And if somebody's like, "Oh, the cover came creased," I'm like, that's not a 1 star review. That
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
nothing to
Yeah.
do with the book." Or if they're like, "Okay, people, look, it says it's sweet and wholesome, but really this is an anti-LGBTQ book." I'm like, "Oh, that's a fascinating take. How many 1 stars are saying that?" And like if 1 stars are saying that, I'm like, now I'm seeing a through thread of why people aren't enjoying this book. Or if they're saying like it's only half a book because it just stops in the middle, and so I'd rather wait until the second book comes out. I'm like, that's interesting information to have, right? Now, if they're just saying things like, "I didn't like it, it was dumb," that's a personal opinion, and that doesn't give me
Right. Yeah.
any
Yeah. Yeah.
information. And you can say whatever you want, I don't care. And then I look at the 3 stars, because I'm going to tell you 3 stars are your average reader review. And 3 stars is your C passing grade, right? So if they're like, "Look, I really like this book. It was okay, let's do it. I'm not picking on Rebecca Yarros, but let's say Rebecca Yarros review. It might say like, it's really great. It's got dragons in it. It's got great action. If you like Academy, it's got it. It's got military if you like military. Some of the side characters weren't really defined, and I felt like they could have been fleshed out more. And some of the world building I wished was really fleshed out more. And, it was longer than I really wanted it to be, or whatever their complaints are. I'm like, okay, there's an average reader review. And that tells me here's some strengths. Here's some things that didn't quite hit for this reader. And I read a couple of those threes because that's really probably your average reading experience for that book. And so that's why I look at reviews. I look at the super fans are going to be all 5 stars. The 1 stars are going to be opinionated, sometimes for good reason and sometimes just because they wanted to leave a 1 star. But those threes are going to tell you kind of the strengths and weaknesses of a book. And I'll be like, oh, I don't care if it's not a fabulously world built story. It says it's funny and it's rollicking, and they'd absolutely buy the next book, even though it has some flaws that they didn't like. I'll give it a shot. So like, or if they're complaining about the heat level in the romance, I'm like, I don't care about the heat level in the romance. If that's part of the 3 star review and the rest of it looks good, I'm going for it. So that's why I look at reviews. And that's why I love, even when my books get 3 star reviews, because I'm like, oh, there's somebody who isn't a super
Yeah.
fan who liked this part of it, didn't enjoy this part as much. Good for them for letting other people know. Right?
Well, and see, for me, I'll read the 5 star reviews, some of them, a few. Because, interestingly enough, because a lot of times what people love about it might be what I hate. Right. And so if it's a detailed review, now if it's a short review, best book ever, it's not very useful for me. But if it's a longer review and goes into detail and it's talking about how, they use this trope and it's your favorite trope, and I'm like, that's one of my most hated ones. Or if they start going waxing about about something that just like, oh, that kind of turns me off. That's kind of what I pay attention to in there. And then, yeah, I go to some of those 3 stars. I don't really go too much to the 1 stars because I think the 3 stars to me are kind of the fairest. And they usually pick up on the negatives that I would care about and the positives that I would care about. Now that said, I'm well aware, especially when it comes to movies and TV shows, that there are things that people just love the hell out of and I just don't get into. And there are things that I love that are just really
Sorry.
low, that are just really low on the totem pole, right? So
Sorry about that,
so yeah.
Devon.
bad,
Yeah,
bad
no.
phone.
Yeah, bad fun. Yeah, but you should go read the 1 stars because they're hilarious.
Yeah,
Also,
I should.
also sometimes I do find them. I kind of want to know what makes somebody leave a 1 star. Like I'm
Right,
just as a
yeah.
human being, I'm curious about that. And honestly, I'm going to tell you, I do this with all product I buy on Amazon. I look at the
Interesting, yeah.
five. I look at the 5 star, then I go look at the 1 stars, and if somebody's just like it, it came with a part broken, and only one person is doing that, I'm like, well, that's one person doing that. Sorry, I don't know. It's a spam call coming in. That's so annoying.
My boyfriend spam calls me a lot.
Your boyfriend?
Yeah, that's what we decided. He's my boyfriend. He's spam. He calls me all the time.
Oh, your boyfriend's spam. That's funny. Yeah, exactly.
I tell my husband it's my boyfriend's
It's my
spam
boyfriend's
calling.
spam. So okay, now we've used up a half hour talking about how readers can find books. Do we want to? Oh my gosh, they are at it today. That one says potential spam.
Oh, a
I'll just
potential boyfriend.
right here. I will. Let me put this on. I know I'm wasting valuable time here, but we are at about what almost 40 minutes. Do we want to do a quick talk about how we
Yeah,
can make our books?
Let's do a little bit about what we've been trying to do this recently, because
Sure.
the reason why all of this came up is because uh, we've been making an effort to try to do things to help make ourselves more findable, make ourselves more on a certain level. We're still wanting to figure out how to reach more readers, but we're trying to do some of the things that, like for instance, on Amazon, we're trying to figure out how readers search books. And I was okay. Step back. My series, the Mission Magic books, this kind of is for me started around them. So this journey. The first book had a cover, and covers are one of the ways that people really notice books and find them. They see a cover and they go, "Ooh, that looks interesting. I'm going to see what that's about." So covers are huge. And my first cover for my first book, I didn't feel, even though I liked it, I didn't feel in the end it did what it was supposed to do. So then I covered all 3 of the books with a more fantastical and a different kind of cover, and I named them. They were originally called the Incubus Trap, or the Incubus Job, the Elf Job, and the Pixie Job. And in my head, the idea was just kind of, I called them my job books, and because my character is a fixer, and she was, each book kind of revolves around a job she has. But as time went on, I realized those are just kind of generic names that I really didn't like, and that and I like the titles now, and I'll say something about those in a minute. But I was feeling the covers weren't quite working. So then I got new covers that I think are a little more dynamic and a little fit the genre a little bit more, fit the characters a little bit more, and I renamed them to the Incubus Trap, the Elf Deception, and the Giant Riot. And I like those titles. I think they work. But then, in the course of trying to figure out some things about the books, I went in and did some searches on Amazon for tropes in the book and words from the book, and my books weren't really popping. And I was trying to come at it as a reader might. And I of course, I have no idea if people really search that way, because I don't go into these and say, I want a book that's, uh,
Urban fantasy with giants.
urban fantasy with giants or something like that. Or urban fantasy from another set. I tried with my other books too, urban fantasy, gargoyles and witches and stuff. Lots of different stuff came up, but mine books didn't. And I'm like, I'm not sure that people search that way, but if they did, they wouldn't find mine. So I'm trying to work out how to make mine more findable in search engines. And surprisingly, when I searched the series name for Mission Magic, a lot of stuff came up, a huge number of stuff, and a lot of it was children's stuff. Weirdly, that was everything from Magic Schoolhouse to the Treehouse books, and who knows. And my books did get listed in there, but it was weird. Where they fell, and even though that's the series title, and it wasn't the series titles for the other things, it didn't come up. So I'm trying to figure out how to make my books more findable just in search engines, much less how we've talked about all these ways other people can find your books, but how do you one of the conversations we have often is, how do we get our books into those spaces where you get reviews or you get recommendations or you get also bots and etc.
Right?
Yeah.
So the thing that you were just covering there is, let's start with, you covered two things, both covers and also titles, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about covers. I think you're right. Covers for authors are the very first thing that sells a book. And I remember when I was first writing, people are like, other writers were like, oh man, cover's the first thing that sells my book and I don't have any say over the cover and blah, blah, covers and boo, it should be the writing. And I'm like, yeah, but like when I'm in a bookstore, a cover will absolutely sell a book to me. I love covers. I love art for books. Like that's one of my favorite parts of being a writer.
Right.
And it's the part that I have really no control over. I love cover artists and I love the covers that they come up with. I am just absolutely head over heels with that. So I love that.
And when you meet a person for the first time, or you see a person for the first time, it's that first glimpse, it's that first look that's like says,
absolutely,
even if it's just friendship, their romance or something else, or your new boss, it's that
2 seconds.
2 seconds of first impression, and that's what the cover gives. It's that first impression.
Yep, absolutely.
Whether it's online or in a bookstore.
Yep. And so cover is very, very important for authors to get as right as they can. And what do I mean by right? Cover.
Yeah, what do you mean by right? Tell me.
Right. So, this is we could go a whole episode just on this, but covers they aren't really there to actually tell the reader everything that happens in the book. That isn't what the cover is about. You, as a writer, you might think that that's it. That's not it. You need to tell the readers that this book is whatever genre it is. So is it horror? Is it a thriller? Is it a cozy mystery? Is it a fantasy? Is it a high fantasy? Is it a, dragon fantasy? That's big right now. Is it a
romantic fantasy? Or
is it a cowboy romance? Is it a mafia romance? Is it a billionaire romance? Is it a small town romance? Like you're trying to get the actual genre in the cover. That's the main thing. And there are different
and as
looks.
Pinpointed as possible so that readers know exactly what they're picking up.
Right. And there are different looks for different genres. So what you've got to do is go find a book that your book is kind of like, that it would sit on the shelf next to, and say, does my book tell people that this is a cozy, a light, cozy urban fantasy that's funny? Let's look at another light, cozy urban fantasy that's funny, and look at the two covers together. We want those covers to both say, yes, this is a light, cozy urban fantasy, and that's done by how the cover is made, whether it's made with illustration, or it's made with photo manipulation, or if it's made with whatever else, however else one might do it. I'm not an artist. And then it's also the font of your title, because some fonts weirdly say this is funny, and some fonts say this is scary, and that's all important. How big the font is important. So like all of the cover design aspect is very important for getting your book seen by readers. Like if you look at, we're back to Rebecca Yarros again, I'll just pick her. If you look at her book, it's basically a dragon like a black outline, right, of a dragon on the
No,
cover, on
not
a
the
yellow
ones
cover?
I got. Not the ones I
Fourthly?
got for my daughter. They changed.
Oh,
And that's what I was going to bring up. They changed because her name, she became a name. So now
it's
it's
her name
more,
that's selling.
it's a big, her name is huge on the cover. The title's there, and it's in a flashy, shiny gold cover, I think, or copper color. And there's an image, but the image itself is small. What's selling that book right now
It's her name.
is
But that's
her
only when you
name.
get to a
And it,
certain level.
right. And that's, but then, so there's that, but then there's also the, sort of the icon covers, which
Right.
or design covers. What do they call them? The design covers that are
Covers.
objects, or when they have vines and stuff all
Typography.
over it.
Oh,
And then most of it's in the typography,
right.
where the
So, but
typography
those
has to
all
do a
go
lot
to
more work.
different genres, right? So we can't go into the
Exactly.
details of that. But like, so cover important, and knowing what your genre looks like, you want to tell your readers this is that in that genre. And then the
Right.
other thing that you're talking about is titles. So I do think titles are important. I think one interesting thing about titles, if you're not a writer and you may not know this, they are not copyrightable. So you can have two authors can use the same title, and you can even have two authors use the same title in the same genre. It's not really recommended because you might like confuse readers. So I'll bring one up that I know about one of my books. So my first book in my Ellie Beckstrom series is called Magic to the Bone. And my editor actually came up with that book title. And it had been out for a while. And then Annie Belay, who wrote the 20-Sided Sorceress books, is that, I think, what they're called?
20-Sided Sorceress.
Urban Fantasy. One of her books in her series is called Magic to the Bone. And we are the only two last I checked, the only two Magic to the Bone titles out there. But there's no reason why she can't use that title because it's not copyrightable. It's not like I'm like, that's my title, you can't have it. As a matter of fact, I was like, twinsies, we both have the same title, right? But having a title that indicates what kind of a book you're going for is really great. Like you are doing like The Giant Riot. So you're doing like all of those titles in that series that you're doing is like a supernatural being, and then a action that's like a disaster of some sort, like a riot or that kind of thing. And that is kind of indicating to people what kind of a book they're going to have. It sounds a little bit like a romp, like maybe it's going to kind of be fun, it's going to have action in it, and your title is giving you that. And okay, here's a title of a book that I have coming up soon. This is going to be my cozy mysteries, and they're going to be set in ordinary Oregon. They're going to be light, funny. They're going to be around a book club. And so the first one is going to be told.
And they're fantastical.
And they're fantastical for sure. And the first one's told through Medusa's point of view. She's going back to her old hometown. And so the title of that book in that series is going to be Gorgon with the Wind, because
that's great.
I'm playing off of Gone with the Wind, which is a book that maybe they might be reading in the book club, and she's a Gorgon. So, and all of the titles in that series are going to have that kind of riff on them. They're going to be a supernatural creature, and it's going to be a well-known book that is going to be in the title. So like thinking about how you're delivering the title, because I was trying to make that kind of funny. You laughed when I said it, so that's worth it, right? To show that it has a little bit of humor in it. And so titles are super important. I do think so.
Yeah. And that's interesting because my Everyday Disasters books, we've got Putting the Fun in Funeral, Putting the Chic in Psychic, Putting the Ice in Nice, and so on. For the next books I'm writing, I don't have a title yet. I mean, I have many, many possible titles, but I haven't picked one. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because they are those. I'm trying to get the title and the font of that title to convey that there's a lot of humor in it and a lot of snark. But there's also a lot of gritty sort of stuff going on, violence, my character's foul-mouthed in many ways, right. And so on. And so I'm trying to capture some of that feel in just the title.
Yep.
Which is why the incubus job, the pixie job, the elf job didn't quite they
I
didn't
agree.
convey things,
I think
right?
you're up. I thought they were fine, but I think you're right. The new titles, I think, are snappier, and I think they're definitely have more hook to them.
And they convey more. They
Hmm.
convey more about what the book is about, even
And they're
though they're
possibly
pretty
more
simple.
unique, which means that when people do type them into Amazon or do type them into a search, yours might come up because they're a very unique title. Like there are, I'm going to tell you a title that I have that everybody has. One of my books is called Hellbent, and that's, you know, off of that old saying, Hellbent for leather.
Right.
And there are so many Hellbent books out there. There are, I mean, just buckets of them in every genre. So I'm like, I would never use that title again because it's, I think, overused. Now I'm not. People can still use it. I don't. I wasn't the first one to use it, but there are some titles that are overused. So you know, that's something that you can look at too. Is if you come up with a title, you can search it and see how many of those books come up, you know, in your genre with that title.
And
Like if you were to put out a book called 50 Shades of Grey, you know, you're going to
yeah.
either come up in that search term, which maybe you want to, or your people are going to assume it's something, right? Like there's some thought that needs to be put into titling.
And people have riffed off famous titles to get
Oh
to
yeah,
kind of to maybe to ride coattails, but mostly to sort of uh, sometimes to be funny, sometimes to be to say that it is that particular kind of book. Um, I'm remembering 50 Shades of Turkey or something like that. That was a recipe book for cooking turkey or something
right,
that
right,
just
and
was so funny, and it did play on the whole sexual nature of it by sort of having suggestive-ish titles for some of the turkey's recipe stuff.
that's funny.
It was actually hilarious.
That's funny. So some of my books, like I'm going to talk about my Souls of the Road book, those have a very specific repeating title, and I'm not in of the mind to change them at this point. And that's because I really wanted to repeat the word wayward in each of the titles.
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's Wayward Souls, and then it's Wayward Moon and Wayward Skies and Wayward Gods, no, Devils, and then it'll be Wayward Gods and then Wayward Vows. And then because I bought another cover that is fabulous, I might do Wayward Dreams. And I know. And the books themselves, that second word in the wayward actually focuses on what's happening in the book.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, I'm going to keep those that way because even though the series title is Souls of the Road, they're really my wayward books. And so those just have a repeating word in the title. And I think you can use that to, like you were going to do with jobs, I think you can use that as a way to go. And partly why I wanted to use wayward, and this is Devon thinking, which probably doesn't have anything to do with marketing, but you know, they're very much a road trip book with supernatural on the road, and I was very much thinking about the TV show Supernatural and how it was always they were always on the road, they were always hunting monsters, they were always on the go,
Yeah.
right? And it's very that kind of blue collar kind of monster world, which fits my Wayward Souls these books. And I thought their song, the thing that they're known as, is the "Carry On My Wayward Sons." And
Yeah.
so I really saw that as kind of fitting in with that kind of lonely highway feeling. And so that's why I use that word to repeat in those titles
That makes
because
sense,
I was
yeah.
trying to evoke that. Now I don't know if I did it, although I did have somebody walk up and say, "Oh, that looks like a supernatural story, like the TV show Supernatural." I'm like, yes, that's what I was going for. So you know, I don't know if that actually makes it more visible, but there are ways that you can repeat, and I think it could be really nice.
Yeah, I it's interesting. I when I was titling my Crosspoint books, the first one is The Cipher, which absolutely is connected to that book in huge ways. And yet, when you do a search for it now, and at the time, there weren't that many titles out there that were similar or that shared that word. And most of those were in the mystery or thriller genre, right? And that's still the case, but there's a lot more of them now. And I still don't know. I haven't thought about retitling those, and I don't know what I would retitle them as if I did. Um, and then the second one is The Black Ship. Totally fits what's in the book. It's not about the characters. It's about, interestingly, an object in the book. And then the third one is the turning tide. And the fourth one is the hollow crown, which are all sort of object titles. But the hollow crown refers to, there's nobody wearing the crown. It's up for grabs. The turning tide is sort of that notion of, the tide's turning and things are huge change, and it is. That's what's in the book. And so it's interesting because it fits those. I'm not sure they're necessarily really catchy titles, but it really fits the books.
Well, I've got to tell you, there's an author I read that I don't even remember the titles of any of his books because they don't it doesn't resonate to me. None of them do. But I don't care. I like the author. So I just pick up the newest one. And that's terrible because I'm a writer and I should be paying attention to titles, but I don't. They don't resonate.
That mystery writer that I like, she has a lot of books out. It's Laura Griffin. And I just love her, but she has a lot of books out, and she has the Tracer series, and she's got some other series. But yeah, I lose track of the names of the books, so that's an interesting thing. And I was thinking too, long series, people with long series. I think it's easy to. For readers to lose track of the title names.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's actually terribly important that you lose track of the title names as a writer. Is it all that important?
I think you want it to be consistent, right? So in my 9 book series, The Ordinary Books, all of my book titles are idioms. Or take off of idioms. So like Death and Relaxation, it's just the first book. Sure, and that's a take up of rest and relaxation, right? And Devils and Details is I don't remember what that was up.
That's a literal one. Devils and
Maybe
Details.
That's a literal one. Yeah. And then Gods and Ends is off of Odds and Ends. So I purposely used idioms and kind of twisted the idioms. And I did that through the whole series. The only problem is if you can get yourself trapped into, as an author, trapped into patterns that you can't, that the idea becomes too stretched to try to make it work. And that's part of what I ran into when I was working on titling the new cozy books that'll be coming out, is I didn't want to trap myself into something that would be hard. Like there's this, I haven't read them, but they look really cute. There's these on the road murder mysteries where she does something like roadblocks, here, let's pick one that's a good one, like burglary. She'll do like mountains, motor cars, and murder. And it's always a trailer on the road. And she'll do like a 3-word title, all with the same beginning letter. And it's always like a place, a kind of a car that they're traveling in, or trailer that they're traveling in because they're like RVing across the United States or something. And then a crime. And I'm like, there's only so many types of crimes that you can first letter with. And so you can get yourself stuck into where you don't have enough titles for a series, especially if it does really well and it expands. So if you get really precious about it has to be a specific thing, you need to make sure you have enough of that specific thing. Like, let's say you did all of your titles off of a color. Well, eventually you're going to run into orange. And let's say that you were trying to rhyme all of your titles with colors, you're going to have to rhyme with orange, and nobody wants to do that. So
you can't do that. That's the problem.
That's the problem. So you want to make sure that you have room to kind of move about the cabin if you have a title and you're going to run a long series.
Yeah. And some people, you don't know if it's going to be a long series when it begins necessarily. And then some people know they're just going to keep writing in a series forever. I mean, she writes the Scarpetta books, the mystery writer, forgetting her name, but she wrote, it started at A and B. A is for this, B is, I think it's A is for
alibi,
this,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it went all the way down to Z. I don't know if she's even completed.
She didn't make it to Z, I don't think. I think, is this Sue Grafton? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
And, I think she finally passed away and she made it to Y or
but that, that has 26 books. That's it. That's all she can do in that series. And she
Right.
wrote in other series, right? She had other stuff going on.
But I
So it
think the
wasn't
other thing that interestingly did, I had read somewhere, is it also kind of locked her into having to write 26 books. Like they were good
exactly.
enough, but I don't know that she really wanted, because she's like, now I'm on the hook for 26 books because there's 26 letters in the alphabet. Whereas I think before she was thinking, let's say 10 or 5 or 3. But, then she was on the
But they
hook.
were hugely popular and she had no idea. And you don't, when you're titling, and of course you can change titles. It's just that when, like, if you look at my Mission Magic books, the Incubus Trap, the Elf Jaw, or the Elf Deception, and Giant Riot, the beginning thing I have in the blurb is this was previously published as this. If you've read that or read or own that book already, don't buy this book because I don't want readers to spend money for something they already own.
Right. It becomes kind of there's a little bit of a hassle to it if you do change titles. Like it's not impossible, like you're saying, but you want to give people the heads up. Now, I mean, that's different with covers. Like everybody puts out alternate covers, so that happens
Sure,
an
yeah.
awful lot in the industry. But yeah, if you change a title, I think that really you do want to give your readers a heads up. Now, I just recently, and I know we're just about out of time here. And we won't get into this too deep. I just recently changed a series name. It was a standalone book that didn't really have a series name, and I just gave it a series name because I'm going to add 2 more books to it, and so I want them to all be collected together and found. And I don't think that's as much of a shakeup as a title. The title's going to remain the same. It has a new cover, and there'll be 2 more books in it. And I don't think changing a standalone into a series, it's tied into the ordinary Oregon series. It's also tied in the Souls of the Road series. So I had called it like an ordinary story or something like that, just to let people
Right,
know
yeah.
it's kind of a part of that whole series. But since I'm going to make it its own little mini series, I think giving it a series title isn't going to throw readers off.
I don't
I'm
think so
not
either.
sure. I
Yeah.
don't think it will at all, which means you can change that maybe easier than you can change titles.
Well, and when you retitle, you have to give it a new ISBN number, and it's a hassle with the different platforms and going through the system too. It's highly recommended that you try to get the right title up front, and that's the part where you're as writers, where we go through this whole process of thinking, how is the reader going to find it? How is this going to connect to the reader? How is this going to be something that they'll that if it's out there for 10 years, if 10 years down the road, is it still going to make sense? Like the
How
ones
will
you
those?
chose,
Well, oh, sorry, I was just going to
the
interrupt.
idioms you chose, and like the Gorgon saying, those have been around for a long time, and nobody's gonna, in 10 years, that's not gonna be outdated. But if you base a title on something now that is maybe really
Skibbity something or
popular,
another.
yeah, and then it disappears out of the general knowledge of the readership, then it won't make sense to in 10 years down the road, and people will go, it was so funny then, but now it's like, I don't
I don't
get
even
it.
understand. That's right. That's absolutely right. And I think also that's a very good point. And I think the other point about titles is you want to think about how it's going to look on the cover as a chunk of text. And I'm going to say
Yes,
I have a pet peeve, but I've done this pet peeve, but I'm going to tell you apostrophes are tricky on titles because readers don't always put them in the search, and it can cause troubles. Or weird spellings of things can cause troubles. So
absolutely.
like think about the spelling, think about how many, like sometimes very very long titles are hard to actually even get on the cover and are hard for people to remember sometimes. So like all that kind of goes into it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's true. The longer the title, the more space it takes up on the cover, which means, and the smaller it has to get on the cover, which means the less readable. Because one of the things for people finding books is it has to look good at a very. It has to be readable and make somebody want to grab it on like if it's on your phone and it pops up in a small thumbnail type thing, can people get enough out of that cover to go, ooh, that looks interesting?
Right.
Or is it a blob?
And that's one of the things when we're talking about fonts. There are some really cool looking fonts out there, but if you put your title in that font, it's almost illegible. You can't read it. Like the F looks like some sort of a strange S, and then the E looks like an R, and you're like, none of this word, I don't even know what word they're talking about. And that's unfortunate. You want it to be clear, even at a
Absolutely.
small thumbnail picture.
And I'm re-releasing my Horngate books hopefully this next year, and I've got the covers, and one of the things that I did on that was also include some design elements that go from cover to cover, kind of a similar appearance, not the same, but a similar appearance. So if all four, there's going to be 5 of them, but I haven't got the cover for that yet. All 4 of them are shown side by side. There's a look to them that says these 4 things belong together.
Yes, and I think
they fit together.
That's really important in a series. You don't want to start with one kind of a cover and then halfway through decide you want a different kind of a cover. You want them all to have the same cover. And if you decide halfway through your series or whatever that you don't want that cover, then you've got to go back like you did and recover all of them. You don't want to leave one hanging out looking weird.
So you kind of use the same font across all the covers. That tends to be a true thing.
You want to kind of put the author name in the same place on the cover across the series if you can.
Yep. And imagery wise, you don't want to change the nature of the imagery hugely. Like you don't want to go from having say a magical cover with a person and lots of magic stuff to having like an iconic cover with a picture of a wand or something in a black background. It just, those 2 things don't fit together. But I want to real quick bring up one of my favorite science fiction authors is Chris Smith, and her Jenny Killian series came out. And I remember when they initially came out because the covers were so wrong, right? The Jenny Killian is more along the lines of Murderbot than it is what the covers were. The covers looked like thriller covers. They showed, it was kind of a black background, had her name and stuff, but they showed a body part usually with a gun, or a couple of body parts, like and the like she dressed in leather, high heel boots, and a big gun, or something like that. And it didn't make any sense for the genre. It was science fiction. It didn't say science fiction. I don't think those books sold nearly as well as they should have because they're really good books. And the covers were so wrong. And even now, years later, those stick in my memories for how wrong they were.
You know, I had an experience when I was before my books even got published. I had hooked up with some other urban fantasy writers, and we were starting the Deadline Games blog. And one of the writers was Lilith St. Croix, and I hadn't met her before, and I hadn't read her books before. So I went out to the store to go buy them. And this is back when we had I don't remember what it was, a B. Dalton or something in town. And I went in and I was over in the mystery and thriller section because her book covers that they were professionally published or traditionally published.
Traditionally, yeah.
They looked like thrillers. They were like a woman with a gun with the circle and the bullseye or something kind of on it. And they were in like 2-tone, very like black and white or blue and white or something like, and they looked very mystery or thriller. And I thought, oh, she wrote mystery thriller books. Let me go get those and read those. I went through the whole section, couldn't find her. And so I finally went up to the clerk and I'm like, I'm looking for these books by Lilith St. Croix. And I, this is the title. And he's like, oh, hang on, let me look that up. And he looked it up and he's like, oh, she's over here in fantasy. And they did not read fantasy or urban fantasy to me at the time. I was new to the genre, but what was out there, it didn't, in my mind, immediately say it was an urban fantasy book. And I don't know if those covers have stayed or changed, or it is neither here nor there. But I, as a reader, looked at that cover, said to myself, I think this is what genre it is, and went that place in the bookstore. Even though I knew she wrote urban fantasy, I still went off of what I saw on the cover to where I would find it in where I thought they would put it in the bookstore. So covers are really important.
And that reminded me of something. These are my original Horngate covers, and I don't have all 4 books here, but I just want to show you the trend. The first 3 had this kind of an appearance, right? With a character, she kind of looks tough. Mm-hmm. But the 4th book doesn't look anything like it.
Oh, wow. No, it doesn't.
This sort of reflects more of probably and none of them really are that much fantastic.
Do you know why they went with such a different look? Was it just different art?
They never said. They never said. But the first three have a more similar color, and she looks like she's been fighting, but it doesn't really have a magical cover. The more I think about it, the more it has kind of a. But this was years ago.
Early urban fantasy. They were trying to figure out how to brand it, right?
Right. And so now the new covers I have also have a tough chick on the cover, but also more fantastical elements. So and I think I hope a titling and font that that works. Well, crossing my fingers.
Well, and I think urban fantasy has really matured as a genre. It's been out for over 20 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Depending on what you count as first urban fantasy, maybe more like almost 30 years.
Yeah,
and so it's had time to try different styles until you can kind of tell what's urban fantasy now. And I think you can't always, but I think I'm starting to get better to be able to tell urban fantasy from paranormal fantasy, paranormal romance fantasy, because that's what happened. Is those two genres the covers kind of smashed into each other for how to signal, and that got really messy for a while, I think.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the fourth book, they came out, I don't remember how far apart I turned them in about a year apart, but I think they were stretched out. I'm wondering if from when the first one came out to when the last thing came out, they kind of firmed up a different idea of what it should be.
I'm sure they did. Because we won't go into cover trends. That's something we could talk about, though. We can just actually sit and have a long talk about cover trends, because there's so much interesting stuff that's happened there. And we could even pull up some examples to kind of do that maybe on a different talk.
We should probably call it quits, because we've been at this a while and people are probably going, I have to take a nap now.
Yes. It is time to go do our writing thing. That thing that we do. Let's do that.
I want to say thanks for everybody coming. Thanks to Devon for hanging out with me.
Thank you, Diana, for hanging out with me. And thank you, readers, for coming. Now, we do have, if you've made it all the way to the end, we do have a request. Please, in the comments below, let us know how you find your books. Is it a friend?
Yes, please.
Is it a newsletter? Please. Where do you find your books? Because we will go look there too. We would love to find our books there too. And if it's one of the places that we mentioned, just say, I go to Reddit. That's where I find it. Or I go to the library. That's fantastic. Or my grocery store. Just let us know. We're super curious.
And for my own enlightenment, if you go to a book platform like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or Google or who knows what, how do you search for books when you don't have a particular book in mind? What kind of search terms do you put in? What do you look for? Because I have no idea.
The new books.
I would love to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so until next time, happy reading.